Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: France on alert, Louvre, Versailles, major station evacuated after bomb threats. USS Eisenhower carrier strike group heads for Eastern Mediterranean. Update 1: Russia asks UN Security Council to vote Monday on Israel, Gaza. Israel plans Gaza invasion to avenge Hamas atrocities. Man attacked by grizzly bear in Montana to return home after losing his lower jaw, says he's ready for round 2. France on alert, Louvre, Versailles, major station evacuated after bomb threats. The Sydney Morning Herald. The Louvre Museum in Paris and Versailles Palace were evacuated on Saturday following bomb threats. The threats come amid increased vigilance in France following a school attack on Friday and tensions linked to the war between Israel and Hamas. The Louvre Museum received written bomb threats, however, no bomb was found and the museum will reopen as normal today. The former royal palace at Versailles also received bomb threats and the area has been evacuated. Paris police also evacuated Gare de Lyon train station following the discovery of a possible explosive bottle. USS Eisenhower carrier strike group heads for Eastern Mediterranean. The Independent. The USS Eisenhower carrier strike group is being deployed to the Eastern Mediterranean to join the USS Ford carrier strike group amid the escalating conflict between Israel and Hamas. The move is intended to act as a deterrent to Iran, Hezbollah, and Syria from becoming involved in the conflict. The USS Eisenhower strike group consists of 8,000 sailors, 4 ships, and 70 aircraft. The Pentagon has stated that the deployment signals the United States' commitment to Israel's security and its resolve to deter any escalation of the war by state or non-state actors. Update 1: Russia asks UN Security Council to vote Monday on Israel, Gaza. Yahoo! Russia has proposed a draft resolution to the United Nations Security Council, calling for a humanitarian ceasefire and condemning violence against civilians and acts of terrorism in the Israel-Hamas conflict. The draft resolution also calls for the release of hostages, humanitarian aid access, and the safe evacuation of civilians. The resolution does not directly name Hamas, but refers to Israel and the Palestinians. The vote on the resolution is expected to be scheduled for Monday. Israel plans Gaza invasion to avenge Hamas atrocities. New York Times. The Israeli military is preparing to invade the Gaza Strip in the coming days with tens of thousands of soldiers ordered to capture Gaza City and destroy the enclave's current leadership, according to 3 senior Israeli military officers who outlined unclassified details about the plan. The military has announced that its ultimate goal is to wipe out the top political and military hierarchy of Hamas. The assault is expected to be Israel's biggest ground operation since it invaded Lebanon in 2006. It would also be the first in which Israel has attempted to capture land and at least briefly hold on to it since its invasion of Gaza in 2008. The operation risks locking Israel into months of bloody urban combat, both above ground and in a warren of tunnels. Israeli officials have warned that Hamas could kill Israeli hostages, use Palestinian non-combatants as human shields, and have strewn the territory with booby traps. It remains uncertain what Israel will do with Gaza City, Hamas's stronghold and the enclave's largest urban center, if it captures it, or what exactly Israeli officials mean when they describe the destruction of Hamas's leadership. Man attacked by grizzly bear in Montana to return home after losing his lower jaw, says he's ready for round 2. CNN. A U.S. Navy veteran Rudy Norlander is looking forward to having a root beer float after a grizzly bear attack left him with part of his jaw missing. The 61-year-old underwent 3 surgeries at the University of Utah Health Hospital where doctors reconstructed his jaw. Norlander is expected to make a full recovery and his family is hoping he will be able to return home on Monday. From railways to 5G, why China is plugging into the Digital Silk Road. South China Morning Post. China's Digital Silk Road Initiative is emerging as a driving force for its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, as the country seeks to cement its position as a global technology leader. While the BRI's infrastructure projects have taken a back seat amid concerns over mounting debt, the digital economy has grown in importance, covering areas such as 5G, e-commerce, and urban planning. China's technological capabilities have grown rapidly in the past decade, and it is now seeking to export its tech capabilities to other countries to build a circle of friends, according to Lim Tai-wei, an associate professor at the Singapore University of Social Sciences. China's digital push is seen as a form of soft power, allowing it to set its own tech standards that other countries will adopt. Hamas is the enemy of peace. Telegraph. This article argues that there can be no peace with Hamas and that the only response to their recent attack on Israel is to destroy the group. Hamas has always been dedicated to the destruction of Israel and has never made this a secret. The author argues that for the sake of the Gazans, who live in a prison controlled by Hamas. The group must be destroyed. Israel has made it clear that its war aim is the destruction of Hamas and the recovery of its kidnapped citizens. Politicians called them traitors. Now they're manning Israel's home front. Washington Post. Former Israeli combat soldiers, who were arrested during anti-government protests just last month, have put politics aside and are now mobilizing to assist in the mass evacuation of Israeli civilians from communities near the Gaza perimeter. The soldiers are helping to drive soldiers to their bases and rescue civilians along the border. The group began in protest against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing government, but have now been given the green light by the army to enter active military zones. The volunteers are now working to evacuate families from their homes, many of whom have lost loved ones in the fighting. "We are the kind of people who do things," said Aaron Navon, a former combat soldier who has carried out hundreds of evacuations since October 8. Israel prepares air, sea and land assaults as Palestinians struggle to evacuate. ABC. The Israeli military has announced that it is increasing its operational readiness for the next stages of the war, with a focus on significant ground operations. This comes as tensions between Israel and Hamas continue to escalate, with both sides launching attacks on each other. Israel has also called up thousands of reserve troops and deployed additional forces to the Gaza border. The country's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has warned that the operation could last for a while and that Israel will not tolerate rocket attacks from Gaza. Meanwhile, international efforts to broker a ceasefire are ongoing, with Egypt and the United Nations playing a key role in the negotiations. Israel vows complete victory over Hamas as Gaza crisis deepens. Washington Post. Israel has stated that it is preparing for a ground invasion of Gaza, as it continues its military campaign against Hamas. Israel's national security chief, Tzachi Hanegbi, stated that Israel could no longer accept Hamas as a sovereign entity in the Gaza Strip, and that a complete victory was the only possible outcome of the battle. The Israeli military is said to be preparing a wide range of offensive operative plans for Gaza. Meanwhile, aid groups and diplomats are trying to relieve the escalating humanitarian crisis in Gaza, with efforts focused on convincing Israel to rescind an evacuation order in northern Gaza, or to at least pause its bombing campaign to allow for aid deliveries. However, there is no sign that these efforts are having any effect. The health ministry in Gaza has stated that 2,215 Palestinians have been killed since the start of the Israeli military campaign on October 7, with almost 1 million people having been displaced in the past week. The UN has warned that more than 2 million people are at risk as water supplies run out. Greetings, viewers of the 6 Degrees Briefing. I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world. Today, I bring you a roundup of some of the latest news stories making headlines around the globe. First, we have reports of bomb threats in France, with the Louvre Museum and Versailles Palace being evacuated. Thankfully, no bombs were found, and both places will reopen as normal. This comes amid increased vigilance in France following a school attack and tensions related to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Speaking of which, the USS Eisenhower carrier strike group is being deployed to the eastern Mediterranean to join the USS Ford carrier strike group. This move is aimed at deterring Iran, Hezbollah, and Syria from becoming involved in the conflict. The United States is showing its commitment to Israel's security and its resolve to prevent any escalation of the war. Russia has proposed a draft resolution to the United Nations Security Council, calling for a humanitarian ceasefire and condemning violence in the Israel-Hamas conflict. The resolution is expected to be voted on Monday. In other news, Israel is reportedly preparing to invade the Gaza Strip in the coming days, with the goal of capturing Gaza City and destroying Hamas's leadership. This could be Israel's biggest ground operation since its invasion of Lebanon in 2006. The situation remains uncertain, but Israeli officials have warned of the potential for months of urban combat. On a lighter note, a U.S. Navy veteran who survived a grizzly bear attack is looking forward to having a root beer float after undergoing surgeries to reconstruct his jaw. He is expected to make a full recovery and return home soon. Meanwhile, China is plugging into the digital Silk Road as part of its Belt and Road Initiative. China is exporting its technological capabilities, particularly in areas like 5G and e-commerce, to other countries. This is seen as a form of soft power for China, allowing it to set its own tech standards. Lastly, former Israeli combat soldiers who were arrested during anti-government protests have now put politics aside and are mobilizing to assist in the mass evacuation of Israeli civilians near the Gaza perimeter. These volunteers are working to evacuate families and provide support during this challenging time. That's all for today's news update. Remember, I'm always here to bring you the latest from the 6 Degrees world. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these stories. What do you think about the escalating conflict in the Middle East? And how do you feel about China's push for technological dominance? Don't be shy, share your opinions and let's start a discussion. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.